historically, horseshoeing has been one of those trades that has been passed down from father to son and father to son. And that is okay, except for new research, new methods, new materials. All of these things have brought about a much more advanced world of horseshoeing than it was. In old days, 100 years ago, the technology didn't mean, there was not many changes. But now, with all the changes that we've had in this industry, it's so important that you learn just the new knowledge. Farriery is a combination of bringing the skills of a horseshoer, a person that puts shoes on feet, and the skills of a blacksmith, putting them together. So now, instead of just hot iron and just horseshoeing, a farrier is a person that uses the skills of a blacksmith to do a better job shoeing a horse. Horseshoes create a situation where you can control the traction and the wear of a horse's foot. So a horse needs shod if the wear exceeds the growth. So sometimes you'll have people that want to go barefoot because they think it'd be so nice to be natural, but in reality, nature is horrible. I mean, we're trying to avoid nature all the time. We wear clothes, we go inside, we put shoes on our feet because we are trying to avoid nature. A horse that is barefoot can have severe problems from being barefoot, just like we could. So a horseshoe keeps the foot from excessive wear. If you live in a situation, or if your horse lives and works in a situation where it doesn't need shoes, then that's fine. But in reality, most horses that have a really active lifestyle or a strenuous job need horseshoes. And then you have horses like these Criollo horses. A lot of what's happening is having a really good shoeing with good shoes like the Lanceros. Farrier that really knows his job can look at a horse, the kind of job it does and where it lives, and then match the right shoe to that particular horse. So that all comes from your education, your experience, your knowledge of anatomy. All of that comes together to tell you how to shoe that horse and what kind of shoes to use. The importance is the same as it is for us. So we have different shoes for different jobs. You don't wear high heel shoes to go bowling. You don't wear tennis shoes to ride a horse, and you don't wear cowboy boots to go run a race. So with a horse can have many different jobs, and you're trying to get as good a shoe as you can for that horse to do the job you want it to do. Well, one of the biggest myths going around right now is the barefoot myth. And there's some theories that are not based on good anatomy that have caused a lot of problems for a lot of horses. So, in reality, a horse's foot has a certain structure. The coffin bone looks like a certain structure. And when we start putting apparatuses on there that don't look like that, then we can cause a lot of harm. So it's, in my mind, the biggest myths are the ones that are based on really bad anatomy. So our responsibility is huge. We have the responsibility to make that horse as comfortable as it can be with what we do to it, because the horse has no say in it. I mean, it is tied up, and then somebody physically picks its foot up and puts a shoe on it. And so that responsibility is incredible. If you were to have to go through that yourself as a human, you would want the very best shoer to shoe you that you possibly could. And you're gonna want the very best shoer using the very best shoes to shoe your horse. Well, like here we have the Lancero, which is a shoe that is made exactly and specifically for the Criollo horse. And it's shaped like a Criollo's foot. It has nails that are appropriate depth for the width of a Criollo's horse's foot. So all of that has to do with that Criollo horse. We also have, like St. Croix makes race plates for race horses. St. Croix also makes some eventer shoes for the eventer and the dressage horse. So these horseshoes are made specifically with those particular horses in mind. And then on top of that, you have therapeutic type horseshoes where you have crippled horses. So you'll have aluminum bar shoes, navicular bar shoes, aluminum straight bars made by companies like Mustad that are designed specifically to help a horse in a certain situation.
jump on the horn. Come on, jump on the horn.
The very basic principle of balance is that you want the platform underneath the bony column to be under the center of that bony column. So whenever you look at a horse's conformation and that horse's personal anatomy, you'll look at deviations that might occur and you'll try to put that platform under the center of that bony column. And so good balance to me means that my foot is placed under the axis of the bony column with the shoe in the center of that. For the horses in our practice, we like to trim them at 5 weeks old and then trim them every 5 weeks for the first year. And then we start putting shoes on at 2. If they're younger than 2, the coffin bone is still growing in this manner, so it's still expanding this way. And if you put a shoe on it younger than 2, then you can confine that a little bit. So after the age of 2, then horses can generally be safely shod. A horse's foot is going to grow about 1/4 millimeter a day. So in 28 days, you have 7 millimeters. And then in 2 months, or let's say 60 days, you have 14 millimeters. And that's a lot of length. Whenever you think about the overall length of a horse's foot, as it grows down, when it gets long, it has leverage. And that leverage can cause problems, so you need to reduce that and reshoe the horse. Also, they can wear out their shoes. You have horses on asphalt and they're on concrete and they need new shoes. So it's 6 to 8 weeks is what we tell people, maximum 8. So I think it's important that a farrier has enough knowledge to look at the wear on the horseshoe and the wear of the nail holes to determine whether or not he can use that shoe again. I think to make a living, you're better off buying a keg shoe and allowing the company to manufacture a shoe. That they're manufacturing shoes for a living, and you have a really, really good product like a Libro. You know, they make rights and lefts, and it's a really nice shoe for a horse's foot. But I think you also need to have the skills to make a horseshoe for those times whenever you have a horse that is not out of the box. You know, you have a horse that has a very unusual foot or he has an unusual problem. If you have the ability to make a shoe, then you can take care of that horse. But if you're going to make a living, you should have a whole lot of different horseshoes that you buy because you can shoe horses faster. So imagine this. A horseshoe nail is an incredibly technical little piece of metal. And if you go to the clavos plant and see how it's made, it'll blow your mind because it's just this little piece of metal. But if I turn that thing backwards and I drive it, instead of curving out of the foot, it curves into the coffin bone. So just that one act of irresponsibility or carelessness on the horseshoer's part could cripple a horse for life. So our responsibility to be good at what we do and understand what we do it's huge. So you know that's the sort of thing you have to really take into account. All right, so for shoeing, the very minimum amount of tools, if I can have a pair of pull-offs, which are designed to pull the shoe, as well as clip-off nails, a driving hammer to drive my nails, a rasp to flatten the foot, a pair of nippers to nip around the foot, and a knife to knife my sole and my frog, and then an apron for protection. With that little basic set of tools, I can put a shoe on and clinch it. But then to make a shoe, I have to have tongs, I have to have a large hammer, I have to have punches, creasers, and pritchels to make the nail holes. And then I have to have a tool to hot fit. And so the hot fitter it'll hold the shoe hot whenever I go to the foot and burn it on. So those, and then you have to have obviously a forge and an anvil. So I'd say in a nutshell, that would be your basic tools. And then, like every horseshoer, you need to have 3 or 4 times that much of everything. As you use the tools, they will get worn. So things like your knives, you just sharpen those every day. When your nippers wear out, you just have to replace them. When your rasp wears out, you just have to replace it. Your punches and your pritchels, you can reforge them. So your actual tools that you use to punch the nail holes in the horseshoe, you can reforge them and grind them. I've been so blessed in my career. I've shod horses and done clinics on 6 continents. So we've been able to see some things as horseshoers that you'd never dream of. But the most important thing is you learn your anatomy to a very high level. You want to know your anatomy better than a veterinarian, so that whenever it comes to making a decision on what to do with that horse, you make a good decision. So that's the first thing. And the next thing is you run your business the way you would want someone to run the business if you were using them. If you will have a viewpoint that every time a situation comes up, you say, what would I want the horseshoer to do in this situation? Then and then do that, you will have a really good business, which will lead to you wanting to do it more. You'll be making more money, you'll be doing better horses, and continue to practice, continue to study. You know, we have a group here, this Mustad group that is bringing clinicians over. They're spending so much money in our industry and putting out so much education for these horseshoers. They need to be here. We're going to see 300 horseshoers in Colombia this week. It's amazing, but we really should be seeing 3,000. Experience, practice, a lot of teaching. So the things that make a good horseshoe are very technical, and the difference between a good horseshoe and a small horseshoe can be a pretty small thing. So you'll see guys that spend hundreds and hundreds of hours, and we have too, spent hundreds, maybe thousands of hours standing behind the anvil making shoes so we can try to make them better.
This is a dang anvil. Oh! Muy bien.